On today's show, the Hawks have played 11 games so far. They are 6-5, and it's time to take stock of how things have gone to this point in the season. Plus, a look at the Pelicans, because the Pelicans are not playing well, and as a spoiler alert, that is good for the Hawks. We'll get into all that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2100. That's episode 2100 of the Locked On Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday. Today's podcast is brought to the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, bet just $5. If your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Head to FanDuel.com right now to get started. And we'll dive in today to what became basically just an interesting time to check out on the Hawks. It's 11 games in. Atlanta is 6-5 at this point. They are in the midst of a 4-game West Coast road trip, the first of which was a positive victory on Monday. And by the way, if you missed it, I did a full breakdown of what became basically the Vit Krejci game on Monday evening. That is an episode that you should listen to. And again, please subscribe and tell your friends about the show. But basically, I want to take stock of how the Hawks have played to date, both by the numbers, by the vibes, some lineup stuff, offense, defense, overall projections, etc. And then later on in the pod, I wanted to get to the offensive things a little bit more deeper, defensively as well. And then lastly, a Pelicans update, because I've mentioned the Pelicans a couple times on the podcast, but certainly it is an overarching story for the Hawks season. And I will explain that in more detail later on. First, though, I want to go big picture about the first 11 games of the season. The Hawks, again, are 6-5 after that big win on Monday. Vit had an out-of-body experience basically in Los Angeles. And if you ask me to give the Hawks basically an objective projection about the Hawks win total after the first 11 games, it would have been basically in this exact range. Now, keep in mind that preseason, I wouldn't have known that Trae Young was going to miss 6.75 basically of the first 11 games of the year, that Jalen Johnson would miss 2 games, that Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who had missed a game in 2.5 years, would miss 2 games, for example. I probably would have guessed that Porzingis would have missed some time already, and he has. But still, I would have probably told you my projection would have been 6-5, maybe 7-4 for the Hawks through 11 games. Not every game has followed that script, of course. I would have been surprised by 0-2 against Toronto, for example. I would have probably been a little bit surprised that the Hawks swept the Magic in the first 2 games. I would have probably had a split in those 2 games as the baseline projection. Maybe even a split against the LA teams. Obviously, one road, one home, but the Hawks swept that as well. So, but I would say overall 6-5 through 11 games would have felt totally fine to me and been like pretty much right in the middle of the projected range for the Hawks through 11 games. And then if you throw in the games that have been missed to injury, headlined, of course, by Trae Young, you got to be pretty pleased, I think, with 6-5. And obviously, I'm not saying the Hawks should be awesome, like should be celebrating in the locker room. This is an outsider's perspective. This is someone who's covering the team every day, but not in the locker room. They of course, want to be 11-0 right now, as they should be. But I'm not saying you dance in the streets at this point in time. I know that there are always the memes about the 500 Hawks. Trust me, I've covered a lot of that basketball, and it's definitely frustrating sometimes to see the Hawks hanging in that 500 range. But at this point, I think it's been pretty solidly positive if you factor in the context of it all. For example, they played a league average schedule to this point. They played more road games than home games to this point, and they're still in totally fine shape despite the injuries, and I would say real injuries to this point in the season. Now, this is not gospel at all, but the publicly available projections that I have seen as of today on Tuesday had the Hawks basically projected to win between 46 and 48 games. That's almost exactly where they were when the season began 3 weeks ago. Now, again, it's not a great thing, but it isn't a bad thing to be where you were supposed to be 3 weeks ago, given all the fuss that's happened so far. It's hard to tell the methodology sometimes, some of these projections, whether they're building in injuries and all that stuff. But it's another logical kind of way to look at the team, pretty much, I would say, meeting overall expectations to this point in the season. For example, ESPN has this basketball power index, its BPI projection, that has the win total projection each and every day, plus playoff odds, etc. They have the Hawks, as of Tuesday, with 47.5 wins. So basically right on the over-under in Las Vegas at FanDuel, etc., with a 68.2% chance to finish in the top 6 of the East after 82 games. That sounds about right to me, especially when you factor in, again, some of the injury stuff. I will get into both sides of the ball in a second, but as of Tuesday evening, the Hawks were 22nd in offense, 10th in defense, and almost exactly dead even in net rating. So right in the middle of the league, basically a 500-ish projection overall by the point differential. That is roughly the template that I would lay out for this roster playing without Trey for a month. The defense has been good for most of the season, with the exception of the rebounding and basically the first game of the year against Toronto getting back on defense. Everything else has been pretty good on that end of the floor. Offensively, they definitely have some issues. We saw that even on Monday, even despite Beat going nuclear, they barely had enough offensive firepower to win that game, but they did win it. And I've been saying this a lot. There's a pathway for the Hawks to win games playing this way, playing fast on offense, trying to avoid half-court situations when they can, attacking the rim a lot offensively, and then also defending like mad. That's been their basically blueprint right now with their available roster, and that's how they won the game on Monday, for example, plus Feet going crazy. So that's evident in the numbers, both overall and even in some of the games specifically, like Monday's game, for example. But like for one more thing on the general side, and we'll kind of dive into the offense and the defense. I know I've mentioned this at least a couple times in the last couple of days, but from a scheduling standpoint, the Hawks caught a bit of a break with when the Trae Young injury happened. Obviously, you don't want to have that happen. Contrary to popular belief in some Hawks fan circles, you don't want to be without Trae Young if you can help it. But I know that's usually the Hawks have pretty bad luck historically, but in this case, it actually came at a relatively positive time. If it had to happen, the schedule is not the worst. I'll quickly preview the game on Wednesday later on in the show against Sacramento, but that's a very manageable game, and it is for a while here. Like, for example, they play the Clippers on Monday without Kawhi. They lost 4 games in a row. They're not playing very well. Now, that's a tough game, and I definitely want to praise the Hawks for winning that game on the road. Nothing is ever assured on the road. That's a good win, flat out. But it's not like beating the Thunder on the road, for example. They play the Kings on Wednesday. The Kings are not very good. It's a tough back-to-back with Utah on Thursday, but the Jazz are not very good either, which definitely helps the difficulty level of that game. Then it's Phoenix on the road. That's a tough game schedule-wise, given that it's a last game of a road trip, but they're not a great team. Home for Detroit, that's a tough game for sure. They're playing great right now, but it is a home game. It's a normal rest game. And by the way, that game got pulled by NBC. I wonder if NBC wants that game back at this point in time because the Pistons are rocking and rolling. The Hawks are playing pretty well right now as well. It's too late, but that was a move to the 7:30 window on Tuesday. Then after that, quickly, it's the Spurs, the Pelicans, the Hornets, and the Wizards in the next 4. So nothing is ever guaranteed or assured in the NBA, but there's definitely a pathway for the Hawks to win some games over the next 2 weeks, and that's all helps. So throw it all on the fire. My general overarching take on the first 11 games of the season, especially when you throw in the injuries. But even without that, I think 6-5, even if they had been relatively healthy, would be a perfectly solid start to the season. When you factor in the kind of context around it, being without Trey, being without Jalen, being without Porzingis some, like being without Nikhil some, 6-5 looks a lot better, I would say, than it might on the outside looking in. And, obviously the next 11 will be more important. They got to keep winning games. It all matters. But generally speaking, a thumbs mostly up for the first 11 games of the season for Atlanta. We'll get into more of the details in a second. Later on, by the way, I will touch on the Pelicans and their positive way that situation is unfolding at this point in time. And I'll also dig in, again, a little bit deeper on offense, on defense, et cetera, for the Hawks through 11 games. And that's all coming up in just one moment. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. At FanDuel, even if you actually miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets, everything that you're looking for across the space when it comes to who's going to score next, to comebacks, and much more. Plus, you can actually combine your live bets together if you want to into a same-game parlay for a shot to win a bigger payout. On top of that, FanDuel has all kinds of bet types that you like and can think of, from point spreads to over-unders. They have money lines, game props, player props, future bets, and so much more. And they cover all the sports that you love. In addition to all of that, the NBA is front and center at FanDuel, as we talk about all the time on this podcast. Plus, they have football, both the NFL and college. They have college basketball. They have MLB, hockey, soccer, golf, tennis, NASCAR. They have F1, boxing, MMA, and so much more. Plus, FanDuel's really easy to use and the fast to pay out when you win at FanDuel as well. Keep every game more exciting at FanDuel, especially when your team is making a big-time comeback in the end of the game itself. And right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. So the place to go is FanDuel.com. Sign up right now and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. No one likes paying rent, me included. If you have to pay rent, you might as well get something for it, and that is where BILT comes in. BILT is changing the game by turning rent payments into real rewards that you can actually use. When you pay your rent through BILT, you can earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of different hotels and airlines, if it's your rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and so much more. But BILT's not just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. With BILT, your rent actually works for you. You can earn points every month on something you actually have to pay anyway, which is your rent. Whether you're grabbing food at a local restaurant that you love or simply heading to the gym, you are still earning rewards with BILT. From your neighborhood to the travel plans, etc., BILT has made everyday life feel more rewarding for you. Turn a rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood right now by joining at joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. That's JOINBILT. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. And make sure to use that link so they actually know that we sent you to them. One more time, it's joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. All right, before we dive back in, I want to encourage you to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check out the show. Subscribe anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And importantly, tell your friends about Locked On Hawks. I appreciate you being here as always. As I said before, I want to dive into the offense and the defense quickly. I'm not going to do a full-on hour-long deep dive on offense and defense like I probably could at this point in time, but I want to share some observations and some notes for the first 11 games of the season. I will go with the offense first. As mentioned earlier, they are 22nd in offensive rating. That's not where you want to be. It is tough, not impossible, but it's tough to be a 50-ish win kind of team at that level. You got to be elite defensively to do that. I think they are going to be better than that when Trey is available to play, so not going to be as big of a concern. And even without Trey, I think they probably could be a little bit better than 22nd in offense overall. Earlier in the year, for example, they were uber elite in ball security. Like they were number one in the league in turnover rate for a while. That changed in a hurry when Trey went down. I will be interested to see if that kind of jumps back up into a pretty good level when he is back and even before he gets back. But I think we know that ball security without Trey isn't going to be a massive strength, but it should be better than it's been so far, I think, if you look at kind of under the hood at what's going on in the requisite games. The number one thing for me, as far as the positives are concerned on offense this year, has been the ability to put pressure on the rim on a regular basis. They are top 8 in the league in rim frequency at cleaning the glass. They're top 5 in the league in points per game in the paint. That's a very good number, set of numbers, I should say. And also that makes total sense if you watch them play. They have not been able to generate a ton of threes since Trey went down. That's been pretty obvious in the numbers if you look at it, both in like frequency, where they're coming from, etc. So that definitely hurts the shot profile a little bit. But as I say all the time, Quinn Snyder has this reputation that people just want him, that he just wants to shoot threes. He likes threes, and I think he should take a lot of threes as a Hawks team, generally speaking. But they do want to go, in Quinn's words, paint to great. They do love to attack the rim, and they're definitely doing that. And right now, personnel-wise, they are set up to do that. With Dyson Daniels has been really good at that. Jalen Johnson is excellent attacking the rim. Even Alexander Walker, who's been out the last 2 games, has been showing a good ability to get to the rim. Okongwu gets there around the basket. Mo Gay is certainly not afraid to get to the rim, for example. So they are set up well to attack the rim, and that's been a huge strength of the offense to date. Now, obviously, there is some noise about the whole offensive profile, given that they're very different when Trey plays and when he doesn't. And so far, Trey's played almost exactly half the games. So it's like kind of hard to parse some of the with or without Trey stuff. But one thing that I'm a little bit worried about is the offensive glass. With or without Trey, it doesn't really matter. The Hawks have been regularly above average on the offensive glass for several seasons now. But this year, they're in the bottom quarter of the league. Like they're bottom 7 or 8 in the league right now in offensive rebound rate. They're probably not crashing quite as much in general, but Porzingis is not a huge factor there offensively by himself. Jalen's offensive rebound rate is down individually. Okongwu's is also down individually. They're going to have to get back to like league average there, I think, offensively to be the best version of the offense that they can be. But I'm at least circling that as an area of not like fear, but somewhat of a concerning thing that they're not really generating those second chance opportunities around the rim. Again, not going to hit on every single thing on this pod. They're shooting the ball reasonably well as a three-point shooting team overall. Like, they're not lighting it up from down there. Obviously, Beat's performance on Monday helped. They're 19th in percentage right now, about 34.5%. They're 24th in attempts. That's a number that they definitely want to get higher, for example. But I think true talent level-wise, the percentage is probably going to be not that incredible. It helps that they did add Porzingis, who's not shot the ball recently. I think Porzingis will make more shots himself. I think Nikhil helps. I think Kennard helps. But they do have lineups where you're playing Jalen and Dyson Keaton's not a great shooter, for example. Okongwu's just okay, for example. So they have some shooting, not huge questions, but it's not like a glaring strength of theirs either. But I got some questions, by the way, about one more thing that I want to hit on in today's podcast is that Dyson playing point guard, basically, in Trey's absence. I would generally say I am on board with that. I think, and I have said this before, I think Dyson is an underrated creator. This is going back to the summer. Like, a lot of people were knocking Dyson's extension based on his offensive limitations. And yeah, he has some. I think Dyson has not been willing so far this year to let it fly from three-point range, and his shooting is certainly a question. But he has been really effective attacking the rim. He's a pretty good ball handler. The passing has been really good for Dyson this year as well. He's gotten downhill. And I think, importantly, he's not a total non-factor off the ball. He is a really good cutter and a processor. He feels the game very well. He's got to take more threes. But I think in general, if you're going to play a lot of Dyson and Nikhil together with Trey out, I think Dyson is the better bet to kind of be the de facto point guard. Now, I have been saying this for a long time. The Hawks are not leaning on one person to be the quote-unquote point guard. That's not going to happen, generally speaking. Obviously, when Trey's back, he gets a different kind of role than everybody else does, which everyone's admitted, including Quinn. But if you have to choose a person to be the de facto point guard, I think Dyson is the clear number one choice in a non-Trey world to do that. And we saw that a little bit more in the last couple of games. That's worked. That's the right decision. I think Nikhil has that ability to be kind of a secondary guy. I would, as I've been saying the whole time, I would be trying to stagger Dyson and Nikhil and have one of them on the court all the time. If Dyson sits, I'd like to see like a Nikhil Luke backcourt, for example, with Dyson off the floor for some secondary ball handling, etc. But generally, Dyson's a better passer than Nikhil by a wide margin, and I think the offense will function better if Dyson has the ball more often until Trey returns. Obviously, I can spend more time on the offense. I won't on today's pod. That's a quick look at the first 11 games. Defensively, it's really encouraging to me that the Hawks have been a top 10 group to this point in the season. They are undeniably helped on defense by the absence of Trey. That's not controversial. That's just reality. They're also undeniably hurt on offense, but the bones are definitely there for a good defense of this team. They're top 10 in the league, and they've earned it, I would say. They've been top 6 or 7 in the league over the last 5-6 games. That is the non-Trey sample, which certainly is not a coincidence, I don't think. I got a question from James, and I would say that it's not totally fake that they're up that high. Some of that is opponent related. If you look at the schedule, they've played some shakier teams, I would say, or some injured teams in there as well that could be juicing in a little bit. But again, defensively, the Hawks are playing very well, like clearly very well. And by the way, that makes total sense when you look at the personnel that they're playing. Dating back to the summer, I was noting this is easily the best defensive personnel the Hawks have had in about a decade. And I'm not trying to overstate that. It's just 100% true. Basically, other than when Clint Capella went absolutely nuclear in 2021 and was a top 5 defender in the sport for a large portion of that season, every other time the Hawks have been a below-average defense. And I think this year they have the personnel to be much better than that. The first shot half-court defense, so basically when the Hawks are set defensively and just defending the first actions, first attempts from the opponent, they are top 5 in the league this year. That was the case even when Trey was playing. They were top 8 in the league or so in that category. There have been 2 major issues, the defensive glass and getting back in transition. Defensive rebounding has been the worst stat area for the Hawks on either end of the floor. One more time. Defensive rebounding has been the worst area for the Hawks by the numbers on offense or on defense so far. They are 28th in the NBA in defensive rebound rate. That's very, very rough and hard to overcome. I was encouraged by how buttoned up they were in the second half of the win on Monday in LA. That's still an area where I am legitimately a little bit worried, given how bad that it's been. Again, examples. Porzingis is a not great rebounder at all. Ricochet is similarly not very good right now at the small forward spot. Dyson's good. Jalen's good, but that's basically it. Of the guys playing minutes right now, Okongwu is certainly solid, like a league average rebounder at center, which is a credit to him given his size. But the only guys who I think are like plus rebounders on defense at other positions are Dyson and Jalen. Everybody else is below, and that kind of, if you kind of break it down that way, it isn't that hard to believe that they're not playing well. Mo Gay is really good too, but Mo's not playing that much, which is a different situation we can address at a later date. Regardless, I would say the transition stuff has been generally improved since the outlier terrible opener against Toronto. That was an all-time bad performance in that category, but it's gotten better since then. Also, generally speaking, they're creating a lot of havoc, which is helpful. Jalen, Ricochet, and Nikhil are all averaging at least a steal a game plus Dyson. Like they're really, really good at wrecking shop, basically. They create turnovers. That's a strength that's very clear for this team. That should persist, I would imagine. But as for how good this group's going to be for the full season, I think that the Hawks being in the top 10 on defense is in play, even when you project Trey to return. They're also a little bit lucky right now with 3-point percentage allowed. They're fourth in the league. That's probably going to regress some. But if you're playing Mo Gay more often, that obviously helps. The lineups with Mo and Dyson have been like ridiculously good defensively. Not a huge surprise there, but that speaks for itself. Like a 100 defensive rating, for example, with those guys on the floor. Some of the lineup data with Porzingis at center defensively is not good. And I'm already on the record that he's got to be better defensively. Like that's not even up for debate. Like he has to play better defensively. I think Jalen does as well. Jalen, I think, probably had his best half or one of his best halves of the season defensively in the second half on Monday. That's a positive. They need more defense from Jalen and Porzingis. That duo has been getting rocked defensively to start the season. But once that all kind of coalesces, there's no reason for me to believe that won't continue. That will continue to be this poor. So overall, I am encouraged by the defense. The proof of concept has been there. Like I thought that they're going to be pretty good defensively coming into the season with the improvements personnel-wise, with having Mo, having only Trey and maybe Luke as a like big negative defensively. And yeah, Vik Krejci's not great defensively, for example, but I would say I'm overall encouraged. Unsurprisingly, the highs have been very high lately defensively without Trey. That is certainly the trade-off you're getting when you lose someone like Trae Young. But even when you build Trey back in 4 weeks or whatever that's going to be, 3 weeks now, maybe less, the Hawks could be and should be at least pretty good on defense, and that's a welcome change from the previous seasons. All right, more to come in a second when it comes to the Pelicans and how that might be looking to improve the Hawks' future and more in just one moment. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, and no BS. You can say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint Mobile, they make it simple for you. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can actually bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts as well. At Mint Mobile, I love you're actually getting the same quality service that you had before for a fraction of the price. The setup is really easy for you as well. Keep the same number if you want to, and then you're up and running in just minutes. Are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch now at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Upfront payment required, $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for 3 months, first 3 months only. Speeds may slow up to 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. These days, anyone can advertise and claim that they're actually going to handle your injury case. Some are not even real lawyers, just out-of-state companies that are trying to cash in on you. Others might promise lower fees and believe you with lower settlements. That's why I would call John Foy Associates. At John Foy Associates, they have a proven record of getting Georgia clients real results for more than 25 years. They don't just settle, they win. I love that they treat every single client with dignity, respect, and compassion as well, and they're available 24/7 to take your call. The best part is you pay absolutely nothing until John Foy wins your case with no upfront costs. If I got into a wreck, I know exactly who I would call, and that is the strong arm. I trust John Foy Associates because they've helped thousands of clients to get their justice and real money in their pockets. So do not try to fight the insurance companies alone. Instead, call John Foy and Associates today at 404-400-4000. That's 404-400-4000 or visit johnfoy.com to get started. They don't just settle, they win. Get the strong arm. Call attorney John Foy and Associates today. All right, and a mailbag question helped me with this part of the podcast, and it is a unequivocal positive. Obviously, there's some nuance, there's some context about the way the Hawks have played this year. They're 6-5. I would say the vibes are pretty good, but not universally. I know there's some Hawks fans that are frustrated. They wanted to be 8-3. I get all that. There's a little bit of context there that's required. With the Pelicans, a little bit less so. There's still some that matters. But a question from Kenneth. Can we get official Pelicans update? How excited should we be? And then a question from Gene as well, asking if I wanted to, if I plan to post about the Pelicans every game on social media like I have been to this point. I'll answer both. As far as whether I keep posting about the Pelicans, most times I would say, yeah, probably so. Not every game, maybe. I might forget sometimes, but it's going to be a big story all season long. And I think for me, it's worth, if I was a Hawks fan, I'd want to know what was happening with the Pelicans. It's a logical story. Now, in previous years, if you follow the podcast, you will know that I kept tabs on the Kings. I kept tabs on the Spurs. Like picks that were owed to Atlanta or might be owed to Atlanta. It was a story. It wasn't an everyday story. With the Pelicans, because it's unprotected, all those things, it's a big deal. It's a bigger deal than anything that's happened in the draft for a while. And I do know that diehard fans know the deal and are already following the Pelicans a lot. But almost every day, I hear from people that are like, why are you talking about the Pelicans? Just as a reminder, not everyone is dialed in all the time. Just to say this quickly, the Hawks have the better of the Pelicans pick or the Bucks pick in the upcoming draft this June. And that pick is completely unprotected from the trade that happened in June that ended up with the Hawks drafting Asa Newell and sending the 13th pick to New Orleans, which became Derek Queen. Milwaukee is 7-4 as of right now, and they have Giannis. So the likelihood, not a definite, but the likelihood is that the Pelicans will send the pick to the Hawks, not the Bucks. And New Orleans, quite frankly, looks like a bad basketball team right now. That excites everyone in Atlanta, and it should. This is a loaded draft. It could be a top 5 pick. It could be a top 3 pick. It could be the first pick in the draft. Those are all potential options, not definite options, potential. With that out of the way, I have talked about the Pelicans a lot on the podcast. I've been talking about it on social media quite a bit, but I'll do that now a little bit. The broad strokes is the Pelicans don't look very good. Not a huge surprise. I was quite low on New Orleans coming into the season. They're not going to be good, in my opinion, but they're probably even worse than I expected so far, and that is to the great joy of the Hawks. They're 2-8 this year, and that's not a fluke. They've faced like a pretty normal schedule, so that's not been crazy. They're only ahead in net rating of 2 teams, Brooklyn and Washington. That's not where you want to be. Brooklyn and Washington are bad. The Pelicans right now, as of Tuesday, are 27th in offense and 28th on defense. They are just flat out bad. Through only 10, 11 games, I get that. It's early, but they're on a 16-win pace. Now, they're not that bad, I don't think. The models don't have them as being that bad either. For example, I mentioned ESPN's BPI earlier. They had them at 26 wins. That's still really good for the Hawks, to be 100% clear. That's not as good as it's been so far, but that's more likely for me to happen than 16 wins. But Zion's been out for a while, but Zion tends to be out. So that's not a huge surprise. It could happen, but they are truly horrendous without Zion this year. They have a net rating of like minus 16 in the non-Zion minutes. That's something to keep an eye on. And of course, this summer, this is a topic a lot. But in addition to the awe-inspiring trade that New Orleans sent to Atlanta, that, I mean, everyone, including me, was like, that's a ridiculous trade for the Hawks, grand slam trade. The Pelicans are just totally misaligned. Like, for the long term, they should be trying to play Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen a lot because their future is tied to those guys. And this season, though, is not going to bring success based on those guys. Rookies are not very good. So the more they play them, the better for the Hawks, generally speaking. Because, again, I like those guys fine. Fears and Queen are good prospects, but 19, 20-year-old guys don't help you win, generally speaking, unless they're actually crazy outliers like some guys are. I will probably do a Pelicans reporter check-in later on in the season, but obviously I won't do this every single day on the show. But needless to say, it's going very well so far for the Hawks. There are only a few teams in the league that I would say are like definitively worse than New Orleans. I think it might only be 2, actually. I think the only teams that I'm like confident are worse than New Orleans are Washington and Brooklyn. That's probably it. And Brooklyn might even be the only one. Washington at least has some young talent. Utah is like in that range. They've been better than New Orleans so far, but they are a weird team. It comes off the season, etc. Maybe Indiana, if they lean into the tank a little bit. They've been terrible so far this year due to injury. Charlotte's pretty bad, I think. But there are some teams in there. But I'm at least getting more confident that the Pelicans are going to be in the lottery as like a mid to high lottery team. And that is great news for the Hawks. I would also stress that Hawks fans should not just assume that the Pelicans are like worse than Charlotte or worse than Utah. They could get their act together and be like semi-respectable. So I would not go in like, only be scouting the top of the draft. They could be the 8th seed in the lottery and it could be the 10th pick in the draft. That would not be great. It'd still be a good result of the trade, but it wouldn't be a throw a parade result. But their upside is very, very clear. And the unprotected nature of that pick makes it juicy. As far as the draft is concerned, people know probably there were 3 guys who were like projected to be clear number 1 picks, or at least that level of player: Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, AJ DeBonsa. So far, there's been a lot of impressive stuff even beyond those 3. Nate Ament from Tennessee, Koa Pete from Arizona, Caleb Wilson from North Carolina, Michael Brown of Louisville. Like there are probably 7 or 8 guys that are pretty exciting, even more than that potentially. So there is every reason, if you are a fan of the Hawks, to be actively monitoring the Pelicans. That's the kind of draft pick that can, I want to stress, can have a real impact on the franchise moving forward. If things break a certain way, that can be a huge factor. And even if it breaks the wrong way, it's still going to probably be a late lottery pick, which is a very impactful pick for the Hawks. So follow the Pelicans. It won't be every day on the show, but maybe a lot on social media. And the Pelicans, in case you were wondering, play again on Wednesday. New Orleans hosts Portland in a game that they certainly could win. We'll see how that goes in the future. All right, before we get out of here quickly, the Hawks, as a reminder, are playing on the road in Sacramento on Wednesday. It's not as late as Monday night, but it's a 10 o'clock Eastern game on Wednesday in Sacramento. So a late night for the podcast, late night for Hawks fans. Notably, it's a back-to-back for the Kings. As I record this on Tuesday evening, the Kings haven't even started playing yet. It's an 11. They play at 11 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. Yes, 11 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday against the Nuggets. So just know as you're listening to this on Wednesday, I don't know how that game went, but keep that in mind. At this moment, they are 3-7 with a -8 net rating. So at best, they might be 4-7 by the time you listen to this on Wednesday. Defensively, they've been terrible so far this year. Keegan Murray is hurt. That hurts them quite a bit. Their best two-way forward. Sabonis has been banged up as well. Like, they are not a very good basketball team right now. As a result, the Hawks on the road without Trae Young are 4-point favorites in Sacramento because it's a back-to-back for the Kings, and they've been struggling so badly. At least right now, according to our friends at FanDuel. That can change, but keep that in mind. That tells you quite a bit about how the Kings season is going. As far as the Hawks are concerned, the big injury thing is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's missed the last 2 games with that lower back issue, and he is questionable as of Tuesday evening for the game on Wednesday. Notably, Jalen Johnson off the injury report entirely. Love to see that. So it's really just Nickeil. Other than that, Trae and Juricic are still out. But we will monitor Alexander Walker throughout the day on Wednesday. It'd be very helpful if he played, for sure. But the Hawks can certainly win without him if they need to. And I'll, as always, have full coverage of that game on the pod at the end of the game on Wednesday. And it would not be posted until Thursday because it's going to be a late night once again on the show. But get your coffee ready for another late night. And then, by the way, they play again Thursday after travel in Utah. All right, everyone. That's all I have on today's podcast. Please subscribe to Locked On Hawks anywhere you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky if you want to at BT Rowland. And then also follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everyone. Stay tuned. I'll be back in about 24 hours with more on the Hawks, and we'll see you all next time.